Thanks, Mr. Brumby, for talking with VCOSS today about social policy and what the Labor Party's planning to do as or when you win in a couple of weeks from now.
So thanks, Cath, and thanks for all the questions too. I know there's a lot of questions that have come in, so
yes.
I look forward to answering them, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, VCOSS members, we've got lots of questions.
Yeah.
Our theme has really been around cause, not consequence. We're really interested to see what the parties are doing, not only to deal with today's problems, but also address some of the causes, so that we don't need to be sitting here in a few years' time talking about some of the same problems. Hopefully, we can see them be fixed. So we'll kick off. We'll kick off with the first one. So one of the first questions is around children and families. There's been a strong media focus recently on child protection from a crisis response perspective. We know that early intervention and the right support at the right time for children and families is the most effective means of delivering the best possible outcomes. How would you incorporate early intervention strategies into your child and family policies?
Well, I think the early intervention strategies are really important, and I like to think that one of the things that we've done really from the day we've been elected is earlier intervention in those areas. So our programs, Child First, Best Start, all of those programs, I think, which are about early intervention, are designed to do that. I think the announcement that I made on Wednesday at the campaign launch with the big increase in funding in the preschool system, the additional places there for children with developmental or autism challenges as well, that 1,000 extra places, is all about addressing that. And I think overall, if you look at the commitment in that area in education, we've been strongly committed to that early intervention. I know that there's strong interest in your membership too about place-based programs, but I think neighbourhood renewal is another thing that we've done pretty well, and again it ensures that you focus on communities and focus on families and try and get in there early, as you said, in addressing the causes rather than the consequences. So they're all the broad things. In terms of any specifics, as I've mentioned, Child First. And obviously that's been a big and sustaining commitment right through a Fair Victoria.
Yes. Well, maybe you just mentioned a little bit about place-based. VCOSS has been pleased to see a strong focus from government on locational disadvantage. We have been concerned that the expansion of the urban growth boundary risks creating new communities with poor access to jobs and services. So given the very strong focus on community renewal, neighbourhood renewal, really working in a very integrated way in places that are currently disadvantaged. What are the sorts of things that you would think you would be doing in order to avert the places being built now not becoming the community and neighbourhood renewal needs of the future?
Yeah, look, again, I've actually spent a lot of time this year in some of those newer areas, the out-of-developed areas. I think we're building those communities in a better way than governments did 20 or 30 years ago. The way we're building the new communities now, if you look out particularly through the west and all of that area, it's very different to the way, say, Broadmeadows was built 30 and 40 years ago, where it was just houses and no services. So the support we're putting in there, whether it's through things like neighbourhood houses, whether it's getting in early with preschools, with primary schools, with community health, I think we're doing a lot of things better there. I think the big challenge, actually, Cath, is to make sure that the jobs are being created in those regions. I mean, if you look at the challenges we've got, particularly through the west of Melbourne and running right out now to past Laverton and Point Cook, there's still too many people who have to come into town to work. And I think, the big challenge now is getting the jobs in those areas so that the commute times are less. I think we've done a lot better with buses in those areas, big run out in buses. So generally with transport, we're better. And I've been to some of the newer areas around Whittlesea, for example, where I think the suburbs that have been built there are absolutely brilliant. They've got beautiful schools, better than when people of my age group went to school. They're just stunning schools, good preschools, good community facilities, great sporting facilities. I've seen some of them just in the last 2 days travelling around. But I think the big challenge is getting the jobs, and as part of the work that the Growth Areas Authority is doing, for every new house that they develop, they have to also identify where a new job will come from. So if there's a housing development with 900 new homes, they've got to work out where is it going to be 900 new jobs. So these are all things that we're doing, but I think we've improved a lot out there. You remember one of the first things I did as Premier was shift community development and planning together to try and get that focus. But I think jobs is the big one to get that right.
Yeah, and in terms of getting to work, and part of that whole urban development is, of course, the jobs, the services, having somewhere affordable to live, and also the transport to connect it up. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the transport and the priority for
Yeah, so we often don't get a lot of credit for what's happened with the buses, but the smart buses have been huge. And I was talking to Janice Munt today and Morty Alec, and I think it's the 703 out there, but I've seen that a few times, and it's just a stunning success in terms of the number of people using it. And I think anyone who uses the bus or drives along the road now will see so many of those stops with smart bus systems now, literally right across the outer suburbs. The expansion of buses generally, we've more than doubled the size of the bus fleet. So this is a really big thing because our rail system is so linear to make sure that people can get between the suburbs. So I think that's much better. In addition, on the established rail system, we're electrifying to Sunbury, we're extending out to South Morang, there's regional rail. There's a whole lot of programs there that are about extending the rail grid and increasing the number of services. And I think the recent commitment too about transit police on the rail lines, meaning that every rail line at night will have a police presence, is also about making the system safer. But I think buses make a big difference. And I always remember when I was first elected to Broadmeadows, I'll just tell you very quickly, I remember a lady telling me for her to get from Roxburgh Park to High Point on a Saturday to do part-time casual work took her an hour and 50 minutes using transport. She had to go in on the train and then out on a tram and then on a bus. And the more I thought about that, it's just a huge disincentive for her to work. She can get the bus now directly across because of one of the new services that we've introduced. So I think buses are really important.
Thank you. Getting to work is one thing, paying the bills is another. Cost of living pressures are increasingly being felt in Victorian households. I know there's been announcements around that from yourself. There is particularly an increase in energy and water costs, and including discussion around the introduction of smart meters. Also educational affordability, so including the increasing pressure on community sector organisations to assist with financial assistance around education affordability. What would a re-elected Brumby government do to alleviate some of these cost of living pressures?
Well, I think the big thing on the utility bills is the announcement that I made the other day, and that's on the summer energy concession. Yes. So, as you know, we've got the 6-month winter energy concession. Even though winter only goes for 3 months, it's a 6-month concession. Yeah. And we've added that now, so it's another 17.5%. So that's worth, for your average pensioner couple, it's worth somewhere between $50 and $100 off their bill, depending on how big their bill is. We can't provide a concession for every household. And I said this the other day in an interview with The Age, actually, on energy. The reality is, I think we've got to be honest with this, that around the world energy costs are going up, and I don't see that that's going to change. It's changing because the cost of power is going up, the steps that governments are putting in place to clean up the environment, and around the world the price of gas is a precious resource and it's moving up. So if anybody tells you that energy is suddenly going to become cheap or abundant or that prices are going to go down, that's not what's happening in the rest of the world. So for all of us, we're going to have to be more, mindful of the way that we use electricity and use energy. But for pensioners and for needy families, we're providing that concession, which I think will take the pressure off. More generally, Obviously, we've got to keep the pressure on people like the banks. You mentioned smart meters. Smart meters is not something that government spends money on. Smart meters was actually a decision of the COAG, the Council of Australian Governments, in 2006 when John Howard was still Prime Minister, and that's been rolled out. I think the benefit of smart meters is for people, particularly renters, for people who connect and reconnect their power. At the moment, you often pay $20, $30, I think in some electricity areas $40 for that reconnection. In the future, under a smart meter, it'll be just $5. So that'll be a much lower cost for those people. But I just generally on cost of living, there is going to continue to be pressures. So as a government, we've tried to target assistance. We've helped pensioners with the stamp duty changes. We've helped with that summer energy concession. We help with people like first home buyers, getting them into the market. We help with things like our school start bonus to try and help families there. And of course, as you recalled, some years ago, we doubled the education maintenance allowance. So we do things in a targeted way in this area, but there is pressure on families, and I think the banks haven't helped. I've been after them in the last few weeks. I think in total, Cath, the amount we're spending on concessions now across government is around $1 billion. So it's a big program. I know you'd like to see us spend more. You are a very strong advocate on this, but we've tried to, as I said, address particularly with pensioners and the summer concession.
Thank you, and we might go on if we have time later just to talk a little bit around sort of energy conservation measures to help people use less.
Yeah, no, I'd be keen to do that.
Might just sort of keep us moving.